Greetings, students, and happy week number 5. Can you believe it? We are almost through this 6-week summer session. So let's kind of talk about what we have going on this week and review what we did last week. So last week was week number 4. We talked about a really fun time, which is young adulthood, or what we call emerging adulthood. We talked about intimacy versus isolation and your reflection from last week. You saw a short little video on intimacy versus isolation, and you really saw kind of in Pitch Perfect 2 how Fat Amy is putting herself out there. She's serenading Bumper, and that's part of that intimacy. Are you willing to kind of make those strides and be vulnerable with the possibility of somebody rejecting your advances, if you will? And then on the opposite end, we saw an example of a young person who kind of lives life by themselves, right? You live life through your computer or through movies, or instead of you getting out there to meet people and to interact and engage, you're kind of alone and sad. And so that was what we looked at. Last week, you also had a few things. So we submitted our academic excursion. I hope you had a really good time finding out more about Delta College, for those of you who did it on campus, as well as for those of you who kind of did phone calls and learned more about it. I heard stories from my other class that some of you ran into each other while you were on campus doing this activity, and that is super exciting. My goal here is to help you to be, again, a successful college student, and I wanted you to know what Delta has out there that you may not yet be taking advantage of. So that was your academic excursion. We also had our love language quiz, which is super fun to find out more about yourself, maybe more about a partner if you're in a relationship, and learn and understand about what is it, or how does it really improve our relationships when we communicate with someone's love language. And, you know, hopefully you learned more about you and what's important to you in that process. Let's see, we also had a case study on Doris Drug Dealer. So we talked about crime and punishment. Some of you really shared your feelings about, you know, whether or not Doris should receive any punishment, and, you know, hopefully weighed the pros and cons about, well, if we don't let her have any punishment, what precedent does that set for future criminals who just think, if I can just escape, kind of like maybe I can get away with it type of a thing. And so I hope you looked at all angles of that case study as well. So let's see here. So last week we did our, and we took test number 3. So you had your third exam. Again, I know this is a seriously fast pace, and I really wish sometimes that we could do this session in a longer format, just because then you have more time to process all of the activities and case studies and things that we're doing and things you're learning about yourself. However, I'm still really proud of you for trucking on and getting towards completion of this very quick-paced summer session. So here we are, week number 5. Now we're moving from young adulthood into middle adulthood, and that is really ages 25 to 65, and we'll talk more about some changes that are going to go on, both physically, cognitively, emotionally. So there's lots of different things going on as we get up into years towards that late adulthood life. This week you have my favorite activity and case study of human development, and that is a group case study with Johnny and Virginia. And so I hope you will watch the video that correlates with that case study, because I think there's some fun in reading out the story together and experiencing that, maybe some surprises along the way as we go through that case study. It's really interesting. I hope it broadens your perspective, or it allows you to really understand how you would handle certain situations and what your value system is. Again, remember, with all case studies, there are no rights and wrongs per se. It is you learning more about you, maybe possibly broadening your perspective in that process, but it's really about that. And then let's see, our reflection for this week, number 5, is really continuing the conversation about identity and about how do you identify, how do you view your ethnic heritage. Remember, unless you're Native American, we all have an ethnic heritage. If your family came from Switzerland, if your family came from Germany, if they came on the Mayflower, they came from somewhere. And that then is part of who we are. And do you claim that or not claim that? And so we'll talk about identity. So a couple things to be thinking of. Number one is going to be paper number 3. So paper number 3 is your funeral paper. I know you're like, ew, morbid, weird, I'm only 19. But as I said before, this actually ends up being one of the activities that students put on my final evaluation they enjoyed. And the reason is because you get to learn more about yourself. So what do? So number 1, look at the example paper. You need to make sure that you look at the example paper to get an idea of the formatting, of making sure you include all of the different areas in the paper. The syllabus outlines what should be in the paper. Couple mistakes I see students make. Number 1 is budget. I want to see a detailed budget. I don't want you to say, I'm going to go all out. I want a gold casket. I want to be wearing Jimmy Choo shoes, and I want it all. So my funeral is going to be, $200 grand. I don't want a total number. I want a breakdown. So you're going to say things like, well, I'm going to be cremated. I want an urn that costs $1,000. Then I want to be able to have a repast or a party or reception. I'm going to have the food catered, so it's going to cost another $1,000 for food. Flowers are going to cost this much. Or I want to be buried in my home country, and so if I'm going to ship my body back to my home country, it costs $1,500 to ship my body back to my home country. Or you say, I want to donate my body to science. And when you do that, a lot of times they will cover some of the cost in that process. So I want a detailed budget on, everything that you would like to have happen. Do you want to have some, again, does religion play a role in your passing celebration here? If you're stuck, if you're like, man, I just don't know what to do, number 1, Google funerals. Number 2, though, have a conversation with your parents, guardians, grandparents, mentors, or friends. Start a conversation. Just go and say, I have this really weird assignment I have to do for human development. I have to write up my funeral. So what do you think you would want when you die? Because I've already had that conversation with my parents. In other words, I kind of thought, why should I make all the decisions of what my parents would like for their funeral? I would rather they make those decisions. So we've talked about it. We've had the conversation. I know who they want to speak. I know who they want to sing, what songs they want sung. I know what their desires are, and I'm going to honor those desires when it comes time. And so this might be a really good conversation starter with your elders or those in your family to start to see what might they want, and then it gets you thinking about what might you want, right? So have fun with paper number 3. And then, of course, we will have our final exam also next week. Extra credit. I cannot stress to you enough that I am encouraging you to submit extra credit. Even if right now you have an A and you think, I'm fine, I don't need extra credit. You just never know. Whether you get sick, you get the flu, something happens, you can't submit a paper, you can't submit an assignment, you somehow lose track of time and the exam closes, whatever it be, I would recommend you get those extra points into your bank since this is a points-based class. We want to do that. If you haven't done well on your exams or your papers or you neglected to submit some assignments, do the extra credit. I can't tell you how many times students come to me at the end of a summer session or semester and say, can I submit these papers late? They were due 2 weeks ago, but I just got really busy and all of this and that, and I can't do that. That you're just not reflecting and processing the assignments in the way they should be done. And so I can't do that. It's really not fair to everyone else either, right? So, and some students will say, but you're so nice. I thought I could turn them in late. And I'm not really that nice, really. I mean, I hope I'm nice, but I'm just not doing you justice by allowing you to kind of slide under the radar there. And so there is a final line, and I want you to be aware, I really, really do hope you'll take advantage of the extra credit to get those points in for next week. All right, so I know next week will be busy because it's our last week, lots of things due. So I typically open module number 6 early. So look for it on the weekend when I get done making all my videos, and just, I will post when it's open, but basically you can look forward to that. That will help you time manage or plan your week and everything you need to get in and get done. All right, guys, looking forward to a really fun and exciting, especially with our case study on Johnny and Virginia, our fun and exciting week number 5 in human development. We will see you next time.